Yo, YouTube, what's up with your boy, Sports and Fitness Rants? I'm back, guys. Click that like button. Subscribe to my channel. What's up, y'all? Welcome back, guys. Welcome back, man. Got another great video for you guys today. As usual, you guys know the deal on this channel. It's all about setting the record straight, stopping the lies, stopping the narratives, stopping them from rewriting history, guys, holding the standard. And in this video, we're going to continue this LeBron James, interview on the Pat McAfee show, or the conversation, because it wasn't an interview, it was a conversation. That's really all they were having, was a conversation, on that podcast. And like I said, I did not watch the entire thing, from the beginning to the end. Why would I want to listen to LeBron James talk a bunch of nonsense, for an hour or however long this show was? LeBron James never says anything good. He's not educating the people out there. Like I said, who wants to listen to LeBron James talk, man? He does nothing for me. But I keep hearing more and more sound bites from this interview, and it keeps getting worse and worse for me. The things that I'm hearing LeBron James say, insane. And we're going to focus mostly on these comments that he made about Dennis Rodman, and that he would be able to play in any era. LeBron James himself still believes that he could play in any era. And we're going to talk about it in this video, because we all know, once again, there's no evidence to point to LeBron James being able to play in any era. And we're going to focus on that. And I want to thank you guys, everyone across the world, everyone across the states have been supporting my channel. You guys know I'm truly, truly humbled, man. Shout out to everybody in the membership, all the true basketball fans. Shout out to everybody on Instagram that sends me messages, anyone who emails me. Thank you very much to all you guys out there. I'm really, truly humbled, man. It really means a lot. Thank you very much. I try to get back to all you guys, when I can, man. But thank you very much, guys, for all the true basketball fans. And you guys know what to do. Turn that volume all the way up. Hit that play button. Remember, these videos are for educational purposes. And let's roll. So yes, guys, like I said, man, I wanted to talk about some comments, or more comments, that I heard come out of the mouth from LeBron James during this Pat McAfee conversation that they had a couple of days ago. Now, we all know that this has gone viral, and a lot of people have been making videos, and people have been talking about it. And we were talking about this yesterday on the Sunday show. And I brought up some of the comments that were made about Dennis Rodman. And LeBron James upset about the comments that Dennis Rodman made, pretty much saying that LeBron James was not skilled enough to play back in that era, in the 80s and the 90s. And LeBron James taking offense to those things and, laughing, LeBron James, he's not big enough. He's not this enough. He's not strong enough. He's not skilled enough. And he's talking about Dennis Rodman, and he's laughing it off, like, making it seem as if Dennis Rodman doesn't have a leg to stand on, or doesn't know what he's talking about. He's just talking nonsense. And we've also heard LeBron James make comments about Dennis Rodman in the past, and, other players have made comments about Dennis Rodman as it relates to this era. And they'll say things like Dennis Rodman would not be skilled enough to play in this era. He had no skills, Dennis Rodman, right? He was a one-dimensional player. I've heard LeBron James say that about Dennis Rodman. I've heard players of this era, other players, say that about Dennis Rodman and some of these other players. They will call them one-dimensional players, which is really laughable to me when you look at the NBA over the last 5 or 6 years. It pretty much seems to me that all these guys are one-dimensional. They don't play defense, so we know that most of these guys are not two-way players, right? Either you're really good on defense or you're good on offense, but you're really not both in this era. So to me, I think we can easily say that these guys are more one-dimensional than the players back in the day. All these guys do is chuck up threes and carry and travel the ball. Carry and travel with the ball all over the place. So I'm not impressed, but they'll say someone like Dennis Rodman is a one-dimensional player. But when we think about LeBron James, and we've talked on this channel, I've done videos, talking and highlighting, and giving you guys the breakdown of why LeBron James would not be, who he thinks he would be in other eras. Now, if we just keep it strictly to the 80s and the 90s, the era that I grew up watching, that I, more specifically, do videos, based off of, I try to give you that perspective. I can't give you perspective of the 50s and the 60s because I didn't grow up watching these things. Now, yes, we can do our research and we can learn about these eras, but it's not the same. I told you, it's not the same as when you grow up watching this stuff live. So the people who grew up watching Wilt Chamberlain, or watching Bill Russell, or Dr. J, or, some of these other players, it's different for them than if we're trying to watch old video footage. We all know that it's hard to find video footage on a lot of these guys from back in them days. But once again, when you're watching it live growing up, like I did in the 80s and the 90s, the early 2000s and stuff, we watched this stuff. This what gives us, more cachet, more credibility to, compare and judge these guys today. They'll make it seem as, oh, you guys are hating. You guys are old heads just hating. No, what we have is perspective, because we're able to compare what we're seeing today to what we saw back in the day. You guys can't do that. All you guys have is this. All you have is the last 10, 15, 20 years maybe that you've been watching the NBA. You can't go back any further than that, so you don't have perspective, right? You don't have context. And that's what we're applying here. That's what we're giving you here on a lot of these channels. We're giving you the historical context and perspective so that, once again, you can form a valid opinion on what's going on today. And for some reason like LeBron, and for someone like LeBron James, he once again does not want to live in that reality that the NBA could be softer and a lot easier than it was back in the day. And that actually is the truth, guys. And that's the harsh reality for someone like LeBron James and a lot of his supporters out there. They don't want to come to terms with the fact that the NBA is a lot easier and softer than it was 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. I keep telling you guys, the NBA hasn't gotten harder. The NBA has gotten easier. But they're trying to make you believe that it's gotten harder. We all know that's not the case. So the standard has been lowered. So when we think about LeBron James and he gets upset about these comments from Dennis Rodman is right on the money here, because Dennis Rodman, once again, is speaking about the overall game, the overall fundamentally sound abilities that you needed to have in order to be effective in the 80s and the 90s era of NBA. Because once again, when we talk about this era, LeBron James has been playing in the NBA with the freedom of movement, right? No hand checking, right? Less physicality in the game, right? LeBron James has been stacking up super teams and, putting all the odds in his favor to compete in his era. You think that he would have been able to do it in the 80s and the 90s? No, he would not have been. Once again, when we talk about the overall game that you needed back in them days, this is what Dennis Rodman's talking about. You could just get by off your athleticism. That wasn't going to cut it. You might be effective for a couple of years, right? But you're never going to reach that level. You're not going to take the next step just off athleticism in the 80s and the 90s. It's not going to happen. When people talk about Michael Jordan's crazy athleticism, and I've done videos on this, right? We all know Michael Jordan. They call him the black cat. The cat-like quickness. You see Michael Jordan in the triple threat position, the jab step, boom, and he got you beat, right? We talk about Michael Jordan's jumping ability, his ability to hang in the air and contort and switch his body for these different kinds of layups and switch hands. All this goes to his athleticism, his speed on the court. You see Michael Jordan get the basketball, this man's down the court in a flash. So we've talked about all these athletic advantages that Michael Jordan has had in his career. But once again, it went hand in hand with his fundamentals. Hand in hand with the fundamentals, guys, and the overall skills that he worked on, that he developed over the years of Michael Jordan's career. So much so, I've told you guys, Michael Jordan never declined. He evolved, right? Working on the game, developing these things. So when you lose your athleticism, the skills and the fundamentals keep you up. It don't allow you to deteriorate and go downhill like a lot of other people do, who rely mostly on their athleticism, that don't fall or rely on the fundamentals and the skills. They don't have the work ethic to keep developing their game and work on their game, mold and adjust and adapt their game. They can't do this, so they decline rapidly. This is what we've seen from someone like LeBron James since he's left Miami. He's declined heavily. I mean, look at the free throw shooting. Look at the perimeter jump shooting, the mid-range game. Look at LeBron James' durability, right? How many times has this man played 82 games? Look at LeBron James' dribbling ability. All go downhill. Still turn the ball over at a high level. Never worked on the turnovers to, the point where you're not turning the ball over so much. Still can't, look at LeBron James' game. No dribbling moves. Michael Jordan had actual dribble moves that he could do with consistency, without even thinking about, right? It was just a reflex that he did out there. Working on the game. So no, maybe Michael Jordan didn't have the fancy dribbling of a Kyrie Irving or a Steph Curry and Allen Iverson or Isaiah Thomas or some of the other great ball handlers in NBA's history. But that wasn't what Michael Jordan needed to do to be effective. Michael Jordan was one of those guys that was precise, right? 1 or 2 dribbles from Michael Jordan to score. He did not need a bunch of dribbling all over the place. That's what made Michael Jordan so great. He could score without dribbling the ball. He could score 1-2 dribbles, boom, right into his move, right into his shot. That's the precision of Michael Jordan, man. He was like a surgeon out there, right? Dissecting, right? And just going through the defenses, figuring these things out. That's Michael Jordan. That's the overall game that he developed working on all those years. Have we seen LeBron James work on an overall game that we've seen over the years develop? There is no overall game. So Dennis Rodman's on the money. LeBron James not skilled enough. He does not have the skills to play in the 80s and the 90s. When LeBron James says, I could play in any era. Yeah, maybe LeBron James could play in any era, but that's not what we're talking about. What Dennis Rodman is alluding to with a lot of other people that we do, when we make content and we make these videos and we say LeBron James, he would not be able to do these things in the 80s and 90s. That's what we're saying. Yes, he could play in any era. The all-time greats could play in any era. But would they be the all-time great in their era, in those eras? That's the real question. And we don't believe that I don't believe that LeBron James would be a 4-time MVP winner in the 80s and the 90s. I do not believe that LeBron James would be, quote-unquote, LeBron James in the 80s or the 90s. I just do not believe that. Because once again, when you look at LeBron James' overall game, what he's shown us on the court over the last 22 seasons, there's nothing there that would lead you to believe that he would be effective at that level in the 80s and the 90s, guys. Once again, we're not saying that he can't play. I'm not saying he wouldn't make the NBA in the 80s or 90s or that he would be, a bench warmer in the 80s and the 90s. I'm telling you, this man's not a 4-time MVP winner in the 90s. I'm telling you right now, this man does not have 4 championships in the 80s and the 90s. There is not going to be any super team building in the 80s and the 90s. And I'm telling you guys right now, when you look at LeBron James' overall game, right, it's just not going to fit in an 80s and a 90s era style of basketball where you need to have more balance to your game. The overall game is just more balanced. There's not 40, 50 threes being chucked up. You'll have 90 shots taken, 80 shots taken from a team. 40, 50 of them are threes. So literally half the game is 3-point shots. That's not balance, guys. Once again, man, the game is free throws and 3-point shooting now. When we talk about the guys' athleticism and the condition they have to be in, not the same as back in the day in past eras, where you had to run from block to block, from baseline to baseline. These guys run from three-point line to three-point line. I've talked about this with you guys. Watch the games, you'll see. These guys don't even have to run sometimes. They take a three-pointer, they come back down the court, the guy chucks a three-pointer. The guys literally did not run, but from three-point line to three-point line. All of that right there. But no one even went from baseline to baseline. It's a completely different game, guys, right? So you don't have to be in as great a shape now as you did back in the day. Look at these guys now. These guys are not in great shape. But these guys are like professional athletes to you. No, I told you, these guys are actors playing basketball. That's what they're doing. They're TikTokers and podcasters, right? They're dress wearers, and they're a bunch of weirdos, man. I told you, they're reality stars who are playing basketball. These guys are not true professional athletes, and they're not grown men. They're a bunch of kids out here. Guys don't go to college for more than 1 year, so they don't develop, like LeBron James, never developed a fundamentally sound game. So he was able to come into the NBA and get by those first several years off athleticism. And LeBron James, a great athlete, come in there and doing what he had to do. But as the season started to go on, right, all of a sudden LeBron James realized that athleticism ain't going to get it done, man, right? So 06, 07, 08, 09, he starts to realize, I just can't beat teams just being a great athlete and dunking on guys. It's not going to get it done. It works in high school, right? When you're bigger than everybody else in high school and you're better than everyone in high school. It didn't work when you got to the NBA, though, right? And other guys had skills. And all of a sudden, your athleticism wasn't going to get it done. You're not going to be a champion just off athleticism. So he never developed the fundamentals like that. Never became a really good rebounder. Once again, still turned the ball over. Never, once again, allowed his teammates to play in the system. So all these years, LeBron James has been trying to get by off athleticism while not allowing his teammates to have a role or to ever put himself into an actual system. Never sacrificed. So once again, right there highlights another reason LeBron James would not be able to play in the 80s and the 90s. In the 80s and 90s, you had to be coachable as a superstar. You weren't allowed to just be like, yeah, man, just give me the ball and have everyone stand around here, and I'm going to do what I do, and you guys just stand on the three-point line. I'll pass you the ball every once in a while. That's not going to get done in the 80s and 90s. You think your teammates are going to be okay with you just dribbling the ball and dominate the ball all game long? Hell no. These guys are going to chin check you. They're going to come up to you in the huddles. They're going to come up to you in the locker room. They're going to come up to you on the bench, and they'll be like, yo, dude, man, pass the ball. Yo, what's going on here, man? You're hogging the ball. You're doing this. You're taking bad shots. You ain't getting back on D. You think that's going to find the 80s and 90s? No, it's not. Your teammates are going to call you out because they're grown men. They're true professionals. They're not going to take the nonsense from a little kid like LeBron James, these weak mentally guys. I tell you, these guys are all a bunch of kids out there in the mind. They're not grown men. They're not true professional athletes, man. They're not true competitors. So you're not going to be able to play in the 80s and 90s with that style of play. Just everyone standing around and give me the basketball and get out of my way. It's not going to work, man. Once again, you don't have the overall game to do so. When you watch LeBron James over the last 10 seasons, like I said, essentially since he's left Miami, and you see how his career has gone downhill, you see how it's gone. This man has not, once again, developed anything. So when you watch LeBron James play, what do we notice? Right? The standard's been lowered, so he's allowed to barrel into guys' chests. We talked about this yesterday. LeBron James allowed to lower his shoulder, use his off arm, push guys away from him. He's allowed to use physicality in an era where there is no physicality. Right? It's laughable. LeBron James, usually the biggest guy on the court, oftentimes when he's out there. In the 80s and the 90s, that's not going to be true. So what else do you know that I touched on yesterday, the live stream? When LeBron James is driving into guys and they're complaining about, oh, LeBron never gets foul calls. He never gets to the free throw line like that. And this guy's crying and moaning. I told you, LeBron James initiates this contact. He's initiating it. But what do you notice from the guys that he's running into? They're often trying to back up. They're trying to avoid the contact because that's what this soft era of NBA is. People trying to avoid contact, so they're backing up, trying to get out of LeBron James' way, not trying to give him resistance, which would have been the case in the 80s and the 90s. These guys are not going to keep backing up and let you just bang them down into the paint and just do whatever you want to do. Back in them days, those guys are going to hold their ground. They're going to stand there. You're going to run into a wall. And you're not going to be able to do that every single night, trying to bang into these guys. Every game, you're going to try to lower your shoulder and bang into these guys like Charles Oakley or the Anthony Masons or any of these guys, the Rick Mahorns, just the big bodies. You're going to run to Robert Parrish all game long. You're going to run to Shaquille O'Neal all game long. You're going to bang into David Robinson or Hakeem Olajuwon. You're going to run to Karl Malone or Charles Barkley or any of these guys. You're going to run to Dennis Rodman all game long or Bill Laimbeer. Any of these guys that are in the NBA. You're going to run into Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. All game long, LeBron James is going to run to these big bodies. No, you're not going to be able to do that in those eras. Because like I said, these guys are not giving ground. They're holding their ground. Remember, guys didn't fall down back in the day. Guys got knocked down. Now, what do you watch in the NBA? Guys fall down. They just fall. Oh, I'm falling down. I'm going to fall down. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to lay down. Back in the day, guys got knocked down. And the difference was, when those guys got knocked down, they got right back up. Now, what do you watch? You guys rolling around, guys fall down. They're down for minutes, which leads me into my next point about LeBron James not being able to play in an 80s and 90s or any other era. How many times have we seen LeBron James go down and, once again, fall down, not get knocked down, just fall down on the ground, and he's rolling around, holding his head, he's holding his arm, he's looking for something that's not there. This is LeBron James in this week era. So I'm supposed to believe like that guy is going to be able to play in the 80s and the 90s and going against that kind of physical defense where guys are clotheslining you, guys are smacking you in the face, guys are grabbing your ankle, they're tripping you, they're doing all these things. And remember, this is all a common foul. Now, these things will get you ejected. There were no repercussions for a lot of these guys. They could do almost whatever they wanted to. Like I said, they could put you in a compromised position. You could be seriously injured. Guys made no mistakes about it. They tell you straight up, we're trying to hurt Michael Jordan. We're trying to do this. I don't remember hearing people say that about LeBron James. And like I said, I see LeBron James not even get touched on the court. This man goes flying into the stands. You're telling me that guy could play in the 80s and 90s? It's not possible. Literally not possible, guys. It's a made-up narrative that they're trying to create. LeBron James could be upset all he wants about Dennis Rodman's comments. Dennis Rodman's on the money. And what does LeBron James do? He gives no evidence to support his comments to back up what he's saying. Dennis Rodman gave you guys evidence. He gave you facts. He said LeBron James don't have the overall offensive skills that, you would need to be effective in those eras. And he's on the money with that. LeBron James' overall offensive game is not like that. He doesn't have the overall post game to be consistently in the post, posting guys up. He just doesn't have it. And like I said, he plays smaller than he is. So he'll say he's 6'9". He'll flex all day long on the little guys. But then 2 minutes later, you'll see LeBron James get grazed and he falls down to the floor and rolls around for minutes. So how tough are you really? Once again, LeBron James is a hypocrite. The way that he talks and the way that you see him act on the basketball court contradicts himself. He's a contradictory dude. So he'll talk the tough on the Pat McAfee show. Yeah, I can play at any era. Oh, Dennis Rodman saying, I'm not big enough. I'm not this. You're not big enough, dude. Because just because you're listed at 6'9", 250 pounds, whatever the hell you are, you don't play that size. Like I said, they'll list him at the same size as Karl Malone. You guys look at Karl Malone, you look at LeBron James, and you tell me LeBron James the same size as Karl Malone. You tell me that LeBron James is going to be able to take an elbow from Karl Malone. Are you kidding me, man? LeBron James couldn't even stand up to Jason Terry or Deshaun Stevenson or J.J. Barrett. He's getting punked by guys like that. He goes back and forth with guys like Lance Stevenson and Dylan Brooks. You think that LeBron James can be able to go toe-to-toe with some of these real true enforcers? Guys that are really come out there and take you out? You think LeBron James would be able to go one-on-one with Dennis Rodman every single season? Michael Jordan had to play Detroit Pistons 6 times a season. 6 times! And that's not including the postseason. Going against these crazy dudes. Going against the Joe Dumarses. Dealing with the Bill Laimbeer cheap elbows and dirty tactics. Dealing with these kinds of guys. Dennis Rodman hounded him everywhere he went. All in his shorts. Just being a nuisance. LeBron James couldn't deal with that stuff. Are you kidding me right now? Would not be able to deal with it. He hasn't been able to do it. He's never had to deal with anything like this. He went against Bruce Bowen in 2007. Bruce Bowen was like 35 years old. LeBron James like 22. And he couldn't do nothing with Bruce Bowen. Nothing with the old man Bruce Bowen. You think he's going to be able to go against Dennis Rodman? You think he's going to go against some of these guys back in the day? That once again could put their hands on you. Could be physical with you. And there was no fouls here. He's struggling with old man Andre Iguodala in the 2015 NBA Finals. And you got these LeBron James fans out here trying to pump up Andre Iguodala into another realm. Andre Iguodala's a really good player, man. He's a solid defender. But the man ain't made that many all-defensive teams. If I remember correctly, I think Dan Marley has more all-defensive teams than Andre Iguodala does, man. And don't knock on Andre Iguodala. Very good defender, man. But stop trying to pump this man up. Andre Iguodala was like, what, 34 years old in 2015? When LeBron James lost out? LeBron couldn't even stop Andre Iguodala. Which brings me to my next point. LeBron James can't guard his man. So how are you going to play in the 80s and the 90s? You got to play defense in the 80s and the 90s. To be considered one of the great players, you got to be a two-way player, man. The great players were two-way players. They were. Hakeem Olajuwon, two-way player. Michael Jordan, two-way player. David Robinson, two-way player. These John Stockton, Karl Malone, these are two-way players, man. Gary Payton, these are two-way players. Clyde Drexler, two-way player, man. Yeah, Clyde Drexler, I mean, on all the offensive teams. And why is that? Because the guys like Michael Jordan, Gary Payton, the Joe Dumarses, remember, these are the guards making all defensive teams. When Clyde Drexler was in the NBA. But Clyde Drexler, I told you guys, to me, probably the greatest offensive rebounding shooting guard in the history of the game. So you're doing other things on the court, man. You're giving more of an effort on the defensive end. LeBron James ain't give effort on defense in 10 seasons, guys. Not even giving effort on defense. It's not about making an all-defensive team. You haven't even given the effort. You're walking back all across half court multiple times a game, consistently. I don't see a lot of these guys do that. Reggie Miller was more of a two-way player than LeBron James has been. He gave the effort. Once again, these guys are not making all-defensive teams because you have some of the great wing defenders in the same eras they're playing with. So you're going against Michael Jordan, and Gary Payton, and Joe Dumars, and Sidney Moncrief, and Michael Cooper, and Alvin Robertson. These are some of the great defenders at the guard position. These are the guys making all defensive teams. So really, where is the room for some of these guys to make an that's how stacked the era was, guys. This is basically what I'm highlighting to you. But LeBron James gonna play in any era. They say, yeah, LeBron James gonna play in any era. But you ain't gonna be LeBron James in any era, dude. You ain't winning those MVPs in any era. I laugh at that. You think LeBron James winning 4 MVPs in the 80s and 90s over guys like Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, Moses Malone, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, like Hakeem Olajuwon, Charles Barkley, Karl Malone, David Robinson? I don't see him winning any of these MVPs. It's just not happening, guys. It's not happening, man. Like I said, you don't have the overall offensive game. And I hate when people talk about, oh, if LeBron James grew up in the 80s and the 90s, if he grew up in that era, then he would play like, no, that's not what we're talking about. That's not a fair thing. We're talking about what we've seen from these players in their eras that would make us believe that they would be able to translate that into another era. That's more fair. Don't talk to me about, oh, yeah, if he grew up in the 50s, then he would be playing this. I don't want to hear that nonsense, man. Once again, you're trying to make it more, nuanced than it needs to be. We're talking about what you've shown us on the video footage, what you've done in your career, in your era, would lead us to believe that you would be able to translate that into the other eras based off of what we've seen you do in this era. And there's nothing that LeBron James has shown me over his 22-year career from the beginning to this point now that would lead me to believe that he would be LeBron James in the 80s and 90s. There's nothing that leads me to believe that. You don't have the overall offensive game. You don't have the mid-range game. You need a mid-range game in those eras. He don't have mid-range. LeBron James can't shoot free throws with any kind of consistency for a wing player. Shout out to my man Jim from Self Research who brought that up in the live yesterday. This man's the worst free throw shooter for any wing MVP in the history of the game, guys. Once again, not impressed with LeBron James. You talk about your lack of defensive intensity and the effort on the defensive end. That's not going to translate in the 80s and the 90s. You're going to have to play defense. You're going to have to bang up, round down low. LeBron James can't rebound in this week era. You think LeBron James is going to be a better rebounder in the 80s and the 90s? No, you're going to be a worse rebounder in those eras. You're not going to get all these flat-footed, easy, chuck-up-three rebounds. You're going to have to battle down low against those guys, against Dennis Rodman for rebounds. Are you going to be able to do LeBron James? No, you're not, because you've never done that in this era. How are we all of a sudden going to say, oh, yeah, LeBron James, with that athleticism, he would be on there? We can't say that because he hasn't even done it in this era. And we all know, once again, the standard has been lowered in this era. The lower standard. That's a fact, guys. I'm not making this up. These guys are allowed to travel, carry with the basketball way more often than they are in the other eras, which once again helps LeBron James be effective this late in his career. He's only effective because what we mentioned earlier, you're allowed to offensive foul, guys, use your physicality, and you're allowed to travel and carry with the basketball. So if you're allowed to use physicality when no one else can use physicality versus you, you're allowed to carry and travel with the basketball. How the hell are people supposed to play defense and stop you? Are we supposed to be impressed by this? No, we're not, when no one even plays defense like that. And they're more concerned about freedom of movement and not having guys get touched. Right? You have LeBron James flying all over the court, flopping everywhere, but I was supposed to believe he would be able to play in the 80s and the 90s? The guy stumbles and bumbles everywhere, but I'm supposed to believe that he would have less turnovers in the 80s and 90s when there's less space? He'd have more turnovers. The officiating would be higher. He would not be that dude. So yes, he could play in any era, but he's not going to be LeBron James in any era. And I think that's the key for LeBron James to remember and understand. That's what we're talking about. That's what Dennis Rodman is talking about. And you gave no evidence to push back on Dennis Rodman. But Dennis Rodman broke down your game and said you just don't have it like that. What did LeBron James do? And Dennis Rodman broke it. He literally broke down his game. Dennis Rodman broke it down. What's LeBron James doing in response? Dennis Rodman said, I'm not big enough. And they're laughing. Him and Fab McAfee are laughing. Okay, but what are you laughing about? That Dennis Rodman's telling you to tell him the facts and you can't dispute him. You had nothing to dispute. None to dispute. Dennis Rodman has more skills than you do. When you think about Dennis Rodman's skills on the defensive end and his skills rebounding-wise, I'm pretty sure we can say that Dennis Rodman's more skilled than LeBron James. I've told you guys this. To me, Dennis Rodman is the most versatile defender in the history of the game. That's from what I've seen. I've seen him do it. I'm not talking about, oh, look at the numbers. I'm talking about what I watched Dennis Rodman do at a high level when it mattered most. So I watched Dennis Rodman guard Magic Johnson in the NBA Finals. Guard this man. Once again, at a high level when it mattered most. I watched Dennis Rodman guard Larry Bird at a high level when it mattered most in the postseason. Right? Not old man Larry Bird. We're talking about peak Larry Bird. Competitor, grit Larry Bird. Dennis Rodman guard that man. I watched with my own eyes Dennis Rodman guard peak Michael Jordan. Guard him at a high level when it mattered most. The Eastern Conference Finals. Several seasons. I watched him do this at a high level consistently, giving that effort. I watched Dennis Rodman guard Karl Malone at a high level when it mattered most. The NBA Finals. Watched him do this repeatedly. Karl Malone, who he's outweighed by, right? Dennis Rodman's as big as Karl Malone, as strong as Karl Malone, but yet Dennis Rodman was able to do it at a high level effectively when it mattered most. I watched Dennis Rodman guard Shaquille O'Neal at a high level when it mattered most, even though he was outweighed by 50, 60 pounds, right? And he was, giving up 3-4 inches on Shaquille O'Neal. I watched Dennis Rodman do that, put that work and give that effort. He did those kinds of things. So you're talking about guarding positions 1 through 5, but not just guarding position 1 through 5. You're talking about guarding the greatest players at these positions. So you're guarding Magic Johnson. You're guarding Michael Jordan. You're guarding Larry Bird. You're guarding Karl Malone. You're guarding Shaquille O'Neal. These are arguably the greatest players at these positions. Arguably. Shaq arguably a top 5 center. Karl Malone arguably a top 5 power forward. Michael Jordan, no argument. Magic Johnson, no argument. Larry Bird, no argument. This is who Dennis Rodman's guarded. LeBron James can't sniff that kind of skills. And we all know about Dennis Rodman's rebounding prowess, which is second to none. LeBron James, once again, can't sniff those skills on the defensive end or the rebounding wise. So when we talk about LeBron James being able to play in any era, he gets upset. Yeah, you might be able to play in any era, but you ain't going to be LeBron James in the 80s and 90s, dude. You don't have the overall offensive game. You never developed that overall offensive game. You've been able to last as long as you've done in this era of NBA because they've changed the rules, right? They've lowered the standard for someone like LeBron James to play longer and look more effective than he really would be. In these other eras, he would have to play defense more consistently, right? Give more effort on that defense, which you have to really do in this era anymore. And like I said, in those eras, he would have to develop an overall game. The fundamentals, the footwork would have to be crisper, right? They're going to call him for the travels and the palming violations. He would have to work on the dribble more, right? The footwork would have to be crisp. He'd have to play in an actual system. So he wouldn't be able to dominate the basketball that way. So he would have to play in a system. Would he be able to do that? We've never seen LeBron James be able to do that. He doesn't move without the basketball well. He can't play without the ball. So how effective is he going to be? That's why I say you're not going to beat LeBron James in the 80s and 90s when you got to play in an actual system, when you got to actually sacrifice, when you got to be coachable, or you're not going to play. Your teammates are going to call you out and hold you to a standard out there. You can't be walking back on D all game long. You can't be lollygagging in practice. You can't be walking off the court early. You can't be flopping all over the place. You got to be tougher than that. Like I said, you're going to be going against much tougher defenses. Guys who are going to give more effort on defense. Your athleticism is going to get negated. It's going to get neutralized to a degree because guys can use physicality on you. There's much more intense rivalries. Remember, the season is more condensed, more back-to-backs, more 3 games in 4 nights. LeBron James can't do that stuff. These guys are ducking this stuff. They're soft. You think he's going to be able to handle the crowds? People yelling things at him from the stands? These guys are sensitive now with things being said. You can't, it's not translating LeBron James. Everything that you watch LeBron James do in his 22-year career does not translate to any other era, guys. Doesn't translate. But when you look at players from the past, the conditions that they played in, because it was harder, it means that they would be able to translate to this era. Translate to this era, guys. If you're a great scorer in those eras, how are you not going to be a great scorer in this era? It's easier to score. They literally make it that way. But once again, it's harder to score in those eras. The conditions are harsher. The sneakers are not as good. You don't have all the medicine and the training staffs, right? All the cryo chambers and the ice baths. You don't have all those advancements, all those advantages. You don't have that kind of stuff. All of a sudden now, the game becomes a little bit more difficult. You don't have these fancy backboards and these fancy rims. You don't have that kind of stuff, right? All of a sudden now, like I said, the crowds are more hostile. The travel's harsher, not these private jets. These guys were flying like regular coach with regular civilians. These guys are traveling on these crummy buses back in the day. So once again, the world was harder. The officiating standard was higher. So how are these guys supposed to translate now to then? It doesn't make any sense. They would be called for travels all day long up and down the court. You guys know the deal. These are the facts, man. LeBron James could get upset with people saying that he wouldn't be able to play in other eras like that. And what they're really saying is not that he wouldn't be able to play. What they're saying is that you would not be LeBron James in those eras. You would be another guy. You would be one of those, maybe an all-star type player, a fringe all-star, or one of those all-star guys that, never won an MVP to me, but was a good player, someone that we remembered, but you were not the guy. You were not the superstar. I love when you hear people say, or sometimes you'll see LeBron James channels on like Facebook, these corny Facebook channels or pages on LeBron James, and they'll show a bunch of pictures of LeBron James being grabbed by the face or being hit in the face or being grabbed by the shoulder as he's going for a layup or something, or someone fouling LeBron James as he's going for a shot, and they'll say, yeah, imagine this guy couldn't play in the 80s and 90s. I laugh at that stuff all the time. So yeah, obviously LeBron James has play through contact. He's been fouled and had I mean, come on, man. We could go to anybody. I could pull up pictures of skinny Kevin Durant going through contact for layups, man. So once again, like we talk about with the highlight film, anybody could look good in a highlight film. I can get some LeBron James highlights right now. and put it out there, and you think LeBron James is amazing. But I can also get 20 lowlights of LeBron James, which will contradict everything that I just showed you in the highlights. Remember, LeBron James' lowlights are lower than the lowest lowlights, guys. And his highlights are not higher than the highest highlights, are they? No, they're not. So once again, don't talk to me about LeBron James playing through contact, because just as many of those pictures that you have of LeBron James, or the videos you have of LeBron James hitting a layup through contact or dunking while someone's fouling him, I got even more videos and more pictures of LeBron James falling and flopping when no one touched him, LeBron James flying into the stands, LeBron James rolling around the floor for minutes from nothing, LeBron James being pushed onto the ground by small guys. We've seen all of this stuff. So once, like I told you guys, LeBron James is a walking contradiction, man. He's mentally weak and he's physically weak, but he walks around and thinking he's tough guy. He said nothing to push back on Dennis Rodman's comments. He gave no context. He gave no facts to say, hey, listen, I do this, I can do that, nothing. He didn't do nothing because he would not be able to. His game doesn't translate, guys. Those are the facts. You guys know the deal, man. I'll catch you guys on the next one.